Wow, Brandon, we really had to scare them right from the beginning.
Oh no, I'm sorry. Don't run away.
Welcome back to Invisible to the Ice podcast. My name's Roselli.
And I'm Brandon.
Today's episode is the rise of slasher films and their popularity.
Ooh, I know you've been looking forward to this one.
Yeah, of course. It's Halloween and it's my favorite time of the year. Absolutely my favorite holiday, hands down. And as I hinted in our previous episode, we would be talking about serial killers. Now, however, I wasn't talking about true crime. I was talking about the horror film subgenre that is known as slasher films.
Ooh.
And I hinted at it. I don't know how many of you picked that up. But here we are, and hopefully we didn't scare you too much with our full costumes.
And if I did, I hope you enjoyed it.
So, what is this subgenre of horror known as slasher films? Like, how did it originate, and why is it so popular?
Maybe because people like being scared?
I love being scared, but I still have to ask those questions because I think it is important in order to better appreciate this area of horror. We should look back at what was going on during that time in history and also like what's behind the scare.
That's true.
Yeah, so some of the films that we're going to be talking about today, and I'm saying this up front because I don't want anybody to get any spoilers. I know probably Brandon hasn't seen majority of these. As we all know, he is allergic to watching movies or something.
Achoo.
So, I do want to give a forewarning that we don't want to give out any spoilers or anything. We will be talking about movies such as Psycho.
Friday the 13th.
Of course. I mean, look at you. Jason Voorhees sitting right next to me.
Ooh, scary.
Terrifying. We also, of course, my costume, we're going to be talking about Nightmare on Elm Street.
Which you look dead on.
Oh, thank you.
You did a great job.
Thanks. Except, I'm the girl version, so I have my long hair and my eyeliner.
And a really snazzy hat.
Thank you. I really like this hat. So, we also will be talking about Halloween, of course. That's another one of the big slasher films with Michael Myers.
Love Michael Myers.
Yes. And the last one would be the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Of course. I'm not surprised.
I also haven't seen Psycho.
Oh, well, at least you've seen majority of the other ones that we're going to be mentioning today.
Very true. All the main ones.
Yeah. So let's get right into it.
Well, first, it's a little hot under this mask. I'm gonna take this off. That feels better.
Yeah, and I'm sure that they can hear you better without it.
I'm sure they can and see this really awesome makeup.
Oh, thanks. I think a very important question that we can start off with is what was really going on around the time that these movies came out. So how about we start off with the movie that kind of paved the way to the slasher films. And that came out in 1960. This movie is, of course, Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho.
Of course it's the one that I haven't seen.
Well, to tell you a little bit about the movie, the first scene is just iconic. It is, and I'm sure you have seen the scene.
I'm sure I have.
It's the scene in the shower.
I've seen it parodied a lot too.
Yeah, because it's so important in the genre of horror. Of course, you have the performance of Janet Leigh.
Was she good?
She was amazing. And she's in the shower, and of course, she gets murdered right away. And that was something that I guess a lot of people wouldn't have expected.
Wasn't she supposed to be the main character?
Yeah. And she just dies off in like the very first part of the movie.
Oh man, they throw you for a loop already.
Yes. So I think the reason why this particular scene was so effective is because of the different elements that I was able to incorporate in there. You've got amazing editing. You have this like silhouette of the man that comes in and murders her, and also this epic music.
I have heard the music. Yee, yee, yee.
Yeah, it sounded a lot better than what you just did. But yes, that's exactly what that song is, or
I'm not an
music. But yeah, so all those elements came together and created this horrific scene. I mean, think about it. You're in the shower. That is like an extremely vulnerable place, right?
I can imagine.
You're just trying to wash off, clean your hair, do your thing, relax in the shower. I like to take pretty long showers.
Yeah, so do I.
So you're not expecting it. And with the shower curtain coming down and, all of that, I think that is what makes it so great.
Yeah.
I think one of my biggest fears is actually like being in the shower and like having an earthquake happen, like what the heck am I gonna do?
Have you ever had that happen to you?
No, I haven't. Luckily, I did live in Mexico City, and we did have a lot more earthquakes than here in California, if you can believe that. I think maybe they weren't as many, but they were definitely stronger every single time that we felt it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I have lived through a lot of earthquakes, but yeah, just imagining being in the shower or even like in the bathroom in general and an earthquake happening, like, you're very vulnerable at that time. And I think this particular scene of Psycho plays a really big role in that fact that that main character is vulnerable at that time.
Yeah, I would have been completely thrown.
Yeah. And, well, after this movie came out, a lot of horror films wanted to generate that kind of success, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I said that it did pave the way for the future of horror films and the generation of the slasher subgenre.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the fact that the rest of the other movies came about a later period of time, with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre coming out in the late 70s. This movie talks about, I know because you haven't seen it, this movie talks about a group of people who end up being murdered at the hands of this horrible person who basically just skins them alive.
Oh man,
tortures them.
Does he have a name?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, but he wears a human face on his face. So he made a mask from
like one of his victims?
Yeah.
Oh, that's gross.
It is. And some part of this movie is now in the Museum of Modern Art, I believe.
Really?
Yeah. And for something like that to have that big of an impact that it's now part of a museum, you know that it touched a lot of people.
Yeah, I can imagine if it's in a museum like that.
So let's talk about what was going on at that time, because I think it is important to take a look at that. It was a period in American history where the U.S. was in conflict, right?
Yeah.
It was the biggest conflict since World War II, and that was the Vietnam War.
Oh, yeah.
So during that time, there was a huge economic crisis, and a lot of people were unemployed.
That's awful.
So this movie, I remember some of the characters do talk about the fact that they just, lost their jobs and things like that. And also, a very interesting analysis that I found talks about how they used basically the killer of the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, used the people that he murdered as like a symbol of like the meat industry and how slaughtering of animals works.
Yeah.
But of course, if you replace cattle with humans, it definitely turns into a whole different kind of scene, right?
Yeah.
I've talked about it before. I don't consume meat. I've never really had a taste for it.
No?
No, but I'm not going to judge anybody who does. But I think that just speaking of that, or, I guess just making that connection with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre and how horrible, like, these people in the movie were treated, it just kind of shows, like, the gruesomeness of some of that industry, that mass production of meat.
Yeah, I can imagine it's pretty gruesome.
Yeah, we have to watch it. I mean, I know I keep telling you this.
Yeah, it's a movie that I really want to give it a try.
Yeah, it is. It's definitely worth the watch. But there are a lot of scenes in that movie that, like, they definitely bring chills. And I think that is what makes a really good horror movie. Something that after watching, you're still remembering it and shivering at the idea of watching it.
Gives you the chills, like you said.
Mm-hmm. It shows its effectiveness.
I think that's what Friday the 13th did for me.
Oh, great. Yeah. Well, don't worry. We'll talk about that soon.
Sweet.
So let's move on to a movie that you've actually seen.
Sweet.
This is Halloween. John Carpenter was a director. And this movie kind of set the tone for what is known in the horror genre as the final girl. So, do you know what that is?
No.
It is a trope in horror films, and it's basically where at the end of the movie you still have like one survivor.
Oh, okay.
And it's this girl who, in the end, is the one that goes on to tell the story.
And that kills the monster? Or just gets away?
Well, considering how many sequels there are, no, he doesn't.
That is very true.
So, in John Carpenter's Halloween, we do have, of course, Michael Myers. And we have, I'm blanking out on her name in the movie.
I don't remember the name in the movie,
but it's played by Jamie Lee Curtis.
she was really good in that.
That was like her most epic role, I think.
Yeah, she kicked butt in that.
And she was like 19?
Yeah, that's young. I can imagine when she first stepped on that set, she was like, what's going on here?
I've seen some interviews of her, and then also we watched the documentary, and she speaks about how they told her to scream, and she's like, I don't know how to do that. Like, who goes around and just screams, right?
I'm sure she figured that out right away.
Yeah, and she would seem to be a natural. I mean, I think she got it from her mom.
Oh, really?
You do know her mom was the one that played in Psycho.
No way.
Yeah, so I don't know if that had something to do with her being casted in Halloween. I'm sure it did.
It could have been. They probably thought she was like her mom.
Yeah. So, with this final girl, we also have a reflection of the moral thinking of this time. And the moral thinking was that basically sexuality and promiscuity are very incriminating attributes.
Why is that?
I don't know why. I mean, it was just a different time.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it wasn't as like morally accepted to, have sex before you're married. And of course, if you did and you ran around as a teenager and did stuff that you weren't supposed to do and partied and did drugs and, were promiscuous, you were deserving of being in slasher films.
Oh, man. That's awful.
Yeah, so I think with Jamie Lee Curtis, with her character in Halloween, she shows that innocence.
Yeah.
She shows that, she's not like her friends that do all these things. And I think that's why Michael Myers is like, you're the one that I'm going to be after. But in the end, she gets away with it.
Yeah, and holds her own.
Yeah, absolutely. She definitely, like you said, she kicks butt.
Yeah, and I couldn't even imagine being in her situation in that movie. That would be awful.
Yeah, he's a really scary character for sure.
I thought I heard that in one of the interviews that Michael Myers is supposed to be like 7 feet.
Yeah, super tall.
Woo! Oh, man.
Oh, and also a really fun fact. I don't know if any of you know that about the Michael Myers mask, but I think you know.
Oh, yeah, I know.
I saw your reaction and I'm like, oh, you know what I'm going to say. Do you want to tell them?
The Michael Myers mask is actually the face of, what's his name from Star Trek?
Now I can't remember.
Can't remember either. William Shatner.
Shatner, yeah.
It's actually his face that they made into the Michael Myers mask.
Yeah, they just painted it white.
That blew my mind completely. Now I can't look at Michael Myers the same again without seeing William Shatner.
Yeah. Or you can't ever watch the show The Unexplained the same.
Oh, no, I can't.
Because now you're going to just think, look that's Michael Myers.
I'll probably just think he's much cooler now.
William Shatner is really good in that show.
He was really good.
So, okay, with this morality issue coming up in these movies, we see the evolution of that and the continuation of that in the making of films like Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
So in Friday the 13th, this morality of thinking is expanded by making those attributes, like I said, incriminating. And so you have Jason Voorhees, who's sitting right next to me, going around the campsite and finding all these teenagers who are partying and doing stuff that they're not supposed to, right? They're supposed to be setting up camp. I think it's like church camp.
I think so.
And so he ends up going around and,
just terrorizing them.
Yes. There are some pretty great scenes in that. The way that Kevin Bacon dies, I think.
Oh, that was messed up.
I think it was really interesting. In one of the documentaries, we saw that they didn't mean to have the blood coming out to be gushing, right?
Yeah.
That wasn't a mistake. That like the tubing where they were feeding the fake blood through, it disconnected, and it just like
I think it just started spurting, right?
yeah. And I think that just added a lot to that particular scene.
Yeah, because it added a little bit more of a gruesome aspect to it.
Yes.
Instead of just, running out, it just went.
And that's one thing about horror films that I really appreciate. I mean, our makeup took
2.5 hours? 3?
really long.
Yeah, it took a long time.
And for a lot of these scenes, the special effects for these murders and deaths, like, it's a lot of work.
And I can imagine for that time period, it looked a lot better than they thought it was going to look.
Yeah, so I think that's one aspect that if you are not really into horror films, just think about the fact that so much work goes into that, including with the makeup and the special effects and all of that, like the camera angles and just things like that just make me feel like that is just the best genre out there. Yeah. But of course, that's just my opinion. You can all disagree with me, but hopefully the more and more I talk about it, the more and more horror fans we will have.
Yeah.
Listening, right?
Yeah.
And now we get to talk about my favorite.
Ooh, Freddy Krueger.
Yes. So, of course, Freddy Krueger was a part of Nightmare on Elm Street by Wes Craven. And Freddy actually adds a different kind of element to the subgenre of slasher films.
What would that be?
That is the element of a little bit of comedy.
Yeah, he was pretty funny.
Yeah. And you know how much I like that mixture of like comedy and horror.
Yeah. I think the Nightmare on Elm Street movies, to me, were the more interesting ones.
I think that the whole story of Freddy Krueger is the exact embodiment of my worst fears. And that is nightmares.
Yeah. I would not want somebody haunting me through my dreams.
Mm-hmm. Not just that, but also the fact that he has this supernatural ability. It's like, okay, now you're just taking superheroes out of the picture and just introducing, here you go, here's Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
So Freddy Krueger actually shows that I guess he was taking revenge on the people that killed him by going after those people's children.
Oh, that's messed up.
Yeah, it is very messed up, but it also is tied to, again, what was going on in that era. And that is, as I mentioned, economic crisis after the war. So a lot of people, of course, weren't able to recover. And unfortunately, that economic crisis was passed down to the children of the next generation. And so, in a sense, it just kind of mirrors what you see in the Nightmare on Elm Street films.
Yeah.
So I know that there's a critic out there that talks a little bit more about that, and we will link, as always, any additional information for you to check out if you are interested in the topics that we talk about. We'll put that in the description of this video. So, yeah, Freddy Krueger is he's just a great character, all in all, because he has that supernatural ability, and also, he is pretty funny.
Yeah.
So I think it's something a little bit different than what you see in the previous slasher films. I mean, when did Jason Voorhees ever talk?
I don't think he ever did.
No. I mean, it makes him really serious. Like the actor describing how he would walk, and he would just like not even look down. He would just look straight ahead and just walk. That adds that element of that creepiness, right? But with Freddy Krueger, it's completely different, because now he's like just even taunting the people,
Yeah,
right?
just toying with them.
And then exploring how horrible people can feel after nights with no sleep.
Yeah, I couldn't imagine just being kept awake, like, because just knowing every time you fall asleep, you're gonna run into him.
Insomnia is no joke. And people that have difficulty sleeping is it affects everything in your life. I know, because I suffer with nightmares, and once I'm woken up by a nightmare, like, I can't go back to sleep.
No?
No.
Yeah. Not like me, huh?
No, you fall asleep anywhere. I feel like if you were standing up, leaning up against the wall, and you were so tired, you would just fall asleep.
Hey, when I watched hockey games, and during those 15-minute intermissions, I'd fall asleep within the first minute.
I know, you fall asleep so quick, and I can't ever do that. I'm so jealous. So, yeah, I think that's what makes Nightmare on Elm Street such a good story and such a good horror film. A great addition to the slasher films.
Definitely. And I definitely think I like the original more than the remake.
I think that goes for all the movies. You just have to appreciate what started it, right?
Yeah, and the two movies are definitely different styles. Like, the newer one, he's more serious, and, he's a lot more passive. Whereas, we watched Nightmare on Elm Street recently.
Yeah, the original one.
And I haven't seen that one in years, and he was much more aggressive, much more comedic, and the combination of being comedic and him coming at you aggressively with those knives is just a horrible combination.
Yeah. I think I know what you mean. Like, even though they were talking about the same story, and it is the same story in both films, yeah, you do see the difference. And yeah, I of course, I like the original. And the scene when she gets thrown up in the air and she's up on the ceiling. Oh my gosh, that's my favorite scene. And I laugh every single time. I know it's supposed to be like, oh my gosh, she's dying, right? But it's just funny how she gets just thrown from one side to the other.
I think it's the effects of the movie. Like just her just flying in the air. Looks like she's just, I don't know. I kind of agree with you. I see what you mean by it.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, those movies are great.
They are amazing. So why do you think there's an appeal for slasher movies?
I think that taking our real life fears and giving them a personification is a way to release some of those fears.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Because if you think about it, they all play a part of what was happening during that time. If you look at horror films from the 50s and 30s, which were encompassing of the universal monsters that we talked about in the last episode, we talked about the werewolf, one of the universal monsters, but you also have Frankenstein and Dracula and monsters like that, right? It was during a different period of time, right? So you have the more gothic novels, right? And then as you move later on into the era of World War II, you have movies like Godzilla, right? That arose because of that fear of the consequences that we would see with the atomic bombs. Also, I mean, just that period of time was just like so horrible, right? What was happening in Germany and how people were being treated. And there's a lot of movies that actually go into detail of, you know, dealing with different wars. And now we're talking about the slasher films in the 80s and talking about Vietnam and how people would just come back from the war completely changed. You have the economic crisis that the war brought, and also just people losing their jobs and just even losing their limbs, coming back from the war and losing their limbs. Life would never be the same, right? And so seeing some of their fears of, like their daughters being too promiscuous or what have you, seeing that in a movie and being able to, I guess, identify some of the issues that you see in real life with the movie makes slasher films and just the horror genre in general extremely important.
Yeah, I can imagine.
I think that it's like an outlet.
Yeah. I also think that, one reason is people like jump scares. They like that adrenaline.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what I like about it.
I was just gonna say that's definitely your reason.
Yeah. And then another one is, I'm sure a lot of people see some of these movies and it's kind of like, I think it's almost like kind of facing a fear.
Yeah.
Like facing a fear of theirs, like you were saying, like with the nightmares, watching that, doesn't that kind of help you face a fear of your nightmares?
Just knowing that it could be worse.
Yeah. It definitely could be. You could actually, die for real in your dreams.
Uh-huh. And seeing very vulnerable scenes like what we mentioned with Psycho, right?
Yeah.
And seeing that vulnerability play out and I don't know, you're screaming inside like, get out of there, just rooting for the person to live, I think.
Yeah, you kind of grow a connection with the characters.
Yes.
Like you want them to survive, you're cheering for them.
I mean, in certain movies.
True.
Yeah, so I think all of that ties into their popularity as as that genre of movies, right? Also, looking at the again, going back to history, we've got the Vietnam War of the time when slasher films became really popular. Also, you have major assassinations, public figures like JFK
Yeah.
and his brother Robert F. Kennedy, as well as Martin Luther King Jr.
Tragic, yeah.
All of that, of course, is going to influence some form of outlet, right? And I think that is why you see these films so prominent of that time. It's a parallel of real life political conflict and the movies.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. I actually never thought of them like that. Like that never crossed my mind. It's interesting to get that to actually think about it like that.
I think like I said in the beginning, it has helped me appreciate the genre a lot more.
Yeah,
I love horror films, no question about it. But knowing what was happening at the time of each film and what inspired it is something really, really important to look at.
yeah, I agree. It's really interesting to think about it that way.
And then, of course, you see an evolution.
Yeah,
Like I said, you go from like the Universal monsters to, kind of a transition to slasher films, and then in the '90s, you have more supernatural stuff, right?
yeah,
And of course, if you would like to have a discussion about other types of horror films, we can definitely continue the conversation. There's a lot out there that are really great, like
yeah,
Jaws,
yeah.
Silence of the Lambs,
Oh, that's a creepy movie.
and of course, The Exorcist.
Red Room.
Yes, yes. That's actually one of my absolute favorites, The Shining.
I can see why. It's really creepy.
It's really good. So those films don't really fit into our topic for today, but definitely those of you out there watching, listening, if you would like to hear a little bit more about these other movies, definitely let us know. And I know it's not going to be Halloween anymore, but I don't have a problem in talking about horror films all year round.
Oh no, I definitely don't either. Love them.
Yeah. I did mention serial killers and true crime, and I think it's important to note that true crime reveals that those fears that we have and what we see in movies is not that bad compared to how terrible people can be in real life.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of leaving me to think that, as I mentioned in the previous episode with the werewolves, that yeah, the monsters are among us. And I think in order to make a change, we all just have to start with ourselves. We have to be better people in order to set an example for other people to do the same, right? And respect each other's views and just kind of share positivity. And I hope that we're doing that with this form of our outlet, right? With this channel and our podcast.
Yeah, there definitely needs to be more positivity in the world, and if we can spread that, that's all we can really ask for.
Yeah. And honestly, I have never met a single horror film fan who is like mean or rude.
No.
And I think it's because we do have that outlet, right?
Yeah.
With a very healthy form of that. And that's, the movies that we like to watch. And yes, it's gory and yes, it's violent, but I'm not out there acting on that.
Yeah. I don't think movies like that will like teach you to do that. I mean,
No, I don't think so either. And I think it's great that we got a chance to look through the ages and be able to pick out the parallels of different eras in which different types of movies were created and say, oh yeah, this was because this was happening out in the world, right? I think it's very cool to be able to do that.
I also think it's cool just to see how, horror movies and slasher movies have, progressed, and just how, how much they've progressed throughout the years. And like you look at all the remakes, just how far they've come.
Yeah, I agree. I think they have come a long way and they have changed quite a bit. And I just like looking back in history, and that way we can actually learn so much about ourselves and hopefully avoid some of the mistakes that we as human beings and part of human culture, we have made a lot of mistakes in the past, and hopefully looking back at history at the mistakes that our ancestors made can help us reflect on that and avoid certain errors. And as I mentioned earlier, just keep on moving forward and evolving and improving as a society.
Yeah, I think that's the point of life, is to learn, learn from your mistakes, keep moving forward, and just keep trying to do better.
Yes, I do agree. And isn't that crazy that we got all of that from horror films?
Yeah, that's something I never would have thought about a while back.
It's a different way to look at things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I just wonder what kind of horror films we're going to have next year.
Oh, that's true.
With the craziness going on now,
yeah. If we can get some better ones coming next year. I mean,
some really scary ones for sure.
Hopefully we'll be able to go see them next year. But
yeah. And as John Carpenter said himself, he mentioned that he didn't believe that horror was a genre. He saw it more as a reaction.
Yeah.
And I agree with that. It is a reaction of the time, what's happening.
It's also a reaction of you getting scared, too. I know that's a reaction for me.
Yes. That pretty much sums up our episode for today.
I had a lot of fun going through all those.
Yeah, me too.
I think that the horror genre has actually slowly become my favorite genre.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome.
Whether it be like the supernatural ones or the slasher movies, yeah, they've slowly made it to the top of my list.
That's really nice to hear. You're very welcome.
Thank you.
So, we hope that you have enjoyed our Halloween episode and our little surprise for you all.
Yeah, hopefully we did a good job. I think we did a good job, or you did a good job.
With the makeup?
Yeah.
Thanks.
But yeah, we hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and hit the bell if you want to see more of our videos pop up.
Also, we are on Instagram, Twitter, and also on Snapchat. So if you want a little behind the scenes peek at what we do in preparation of our episodes. I also want to do something a little bit extra on our Instagram stories, and that's because every episode we make a little drink beforehand to kind of get started, and I want to share some of those recipes with you. So if you're interested, make sure to go and follow us there.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
And and leave us comments. Tell us what you think. What are your favorite horror films? Favorite slasher films? Yeah.
And suggestions for future episodes.
Yeah, whether it's other horror movies you want to hear about,
Yeah.
we will definitely do them.
Yeah. So, yeah, we'll see you guys next time.
And remember
to look beyond what you see.
See you guys next time.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Bye.